When hope is gone, undo this lock and send me forth on a moonlit walk. Release restraint level 0. Hey kids, wanna see a dead body?
Hi guys, this is the Void of the Ravenclaw. Welcome back to another fanfiction story. If you like this type of content, smash the like button and subscribe for future updates that I do post on my community tab frequently. Now, let's continue where we last left off in our story. Superman and Supergirl took flight and charged Metallo. Clark assaulted Metallo from the front while his cousin, Kara, flanked Metallo on the side. There were several shock waves being created by the two Kryptonians engaging in close quarter combat with Metallo, trying to block, but slowly Superman and Supergirl were making progress by overtaking him little by little bit. Metallo shot off a shot of his kryptonite energy beam out of his chest towards Supergirl. Kara dodged out of the way of the beam of energy, then proceeded to uppercut Metallo, forcing him to become airborne. Superman flew above Metallo and connected both of his hands into a fist and slammed a Hellmaker with both of his fists crunched up into a fist, basically, and slammed Metallo back to the ground while Superman dove downwards. When Metallo hit the ground, Superman slammed his fist into Metallo's upper chest. Before Supergirl could get any closer to give Metallo further damage, she was blasted out of the sky from the kryptonite beam shooting out of Metallo's eyes. Metallo extended his palm over towards Superman without even looking and blasted him away with the same type of energy that he just shut out of his eyes. Metallo proceeded to attack Superman once again by getting in close and slamming his metal fist across Superman's ribs, then slam a right hook across his face, making Superman slam into several cars, into a few buildings. Kara was able to block most of the blast by using her forearms. By now, she finally recovered from being hit out of the sky. But it still hurt like a bitch for Supergirl. It's not powerful enough to take her down permanently. So once she was making sure that she's not seriously injured, she proceeded to fly towards Metallo, only to see her initial attack get dodged by the metal man, known as Metallo, and slam his elbow into Supergirl's face, then grab her by the hair and throw her across the street, hitting a couple street signs, finally stopping when she hit a brick wall. As you could see, spiderweb cracks behind her from hitting the wall so hard, making cracks in a brick wall. Basically, it's a huge brick wall. From the force of basically what I just said. Metallo noticed Superman got behind him and got him in a vice grip. a bear hug, but basically keeping him from moving in place. Do it now, as Clark yelled out to his cousin, only for Clark to hear Metallo laughing, as Metallo has a vicious grin as Clark gets a super dose of electricity while Supergirl was flying towards him, making Superman lose his grip. Metallo proceeds to headbutt the Kryptonian from behind and blast Superman using the kryptonite energy from his palm. Then Metallo was forced to block a incoming strike from Supergirl when Supergirl fist collided with Metallo's forearm when he blocked her attack. There was a slight shock wave that skid Metallo backwards from the force of the punch that Supergirl dished out. Nice try, hero. It would have worked if I didn't get it upgraded. I had this body upgraded to my specific specs. Faster, stronger, and the kryptonite energy gives a nice kick. And I could produce high condensed bolts of electricity, as you just witnessed with mighty Superman over there. Bucket of bolts, you talk too much. The moment those left her lips, she landed and dished out a right hook across Metallo's face before the villain could fly backwards from the force of her strike. She grabbed firm onto his right arm and repeatedly lift him up in the middle there and smash him into the ground repeatedly. As she kicked him over and began landing right hook after left hook, one after another, Supergirl lifted up Metallo by the arm and cocked back her left fist and threw out a more powerful strike that's been seen so far. Right after that, Kara proceeds to headbutt Metallo to further daze him, then kick his legs underneath him and slam him back onto the ground. As Kara picks Metallo up by the chest and lifts him up and slam him into the street repeatedly. As the ground is shaking, as you see some of the windows are rattling, Metallo is getting slammed into the street repeatedly. He managed to recover as he slammed into the street ground a few times, then proceed to kick Supergirl the back of her leg, making her bend down to one knee, making her unbalanced. As Metallo jump up to his feet and grab Supergirl by the face by grabbing her by her hair, beginning to run around, slamming Supergirl's face into several walls of buildings as they're running down the street with incredible speed, as he proceeds to place Supergirl's face into the floor of the street, dragging her along as they're moving pretty fast, where normal civilians can't. Hard to keep up. As Metallo skid to a stop and picked up Supergirl by the hair, so they're both at eye level with each other. A kryptonite blade pop out of Metallo's forearm near his wrist. It's a blade made of kryptonite, basically what it is. Time to die, girl. Any last words? Don't worry. Superman will be following you shortly. Go to hell, you bastard. As she spit into Metallo's face. You first, alien. Before Metallo could pierce Supergirl with the kryptonite blade, he was hit across the face by Superman, saving his cousin from getting that kryptonite blade ran through her chest. That would most likely end up killing her if he didn't act as fast as he did. Superman, Metallo, and Supergirl could hear sounds of battle from the direction where Parasite and Deku. They're currently exchanging blows with each other, strike after strike. Let Deku dish out. Parasite would land his own. Deku duck under a right hook from Parasite. And spinning around into a spinning kick across his left side of Parasite's face, making Parasite stumble backwards. He stepped backwards a few steps, then spit out some blood out of his mouth, surprising from being kicked. You look surprised, Parasite. Was it? I'm guessing you're not used to fighting against... Sorry. I'm guessing you're just used to fighting against brawlers, like that Boy Scout over there. Don't have any form whatsoever. Trust me, I'm nothing like the Boy Scout. I actually have skill. You're not fighting someone who can only throw fists like a barbarian, you pathetic fool. You talk pretty big, kid. I'm going to enjoy this more than I should. At least we agree upon that. I've always enjoyed watching my opponent beaten at my mercy. It gives somewhat a satisfied feeling deep down in my cold heart. Speaking of cold, I suggest you start dodging, unless you want to be a pincushion. As several medium-sized shards of ice come into existence around Deku, all the ice shards immediately pointed at Parasite and flew off in his direction with incredible speed and accuracy. Like Deku has some sort of mental control over his eyes. Parasite was surprised by the speed of the ice shards that are flying towards him. Like a rocket, even managed to damage some of his suit that covers his entire body. Parasite used his heat vision to destroy the remaining ice shards that are flying around in the sky, trying to run him through. When he was confident there was no more ice shards, Parasite began to get into close quarters combat once again, as they both began to exchange blows, making small shockwaves from each of their strike. Deku by this time has memorized Parasite's movements and capitalized on imperfection in his hand-to-hand combat. He's not fighting some martial artist, he's fighting a street punk that has no training, only has a nifty ability to siphon powers, that's all he has. Without his powers, he's nothing but a thug. And Deku knows that. So he viciously utilized any opening while he was fighting with his fists, while Parasite was fighting wildly with his fists, hoping to hit Deku, only for Deku to effortlessly, with skill, starting to dodge more of the blows. Parasite used a faint right hook to latch onto Deku's wrist with his hand, begin to siphon some of his abilities. Deku could feel his ice abilities being drained and struck Parasite with his ice-coated right fist into his face, forcing Parasite to lose grip on Deku's wrist, making Parasite go flying backwards across the street. Sight wiped the blood from his mouth and kept Deku in his view of sight. So that's what your ability is. Power over ice. Interesting. It's careless, enjoying my ability. As long as you have it. Because you won't be siphoning any more of my abilities, you leech. You might have stolen and copied some of my abilities, but you have no way of knowing how to use them appropriately. I'll simply have to take you out before you get used to them. Deku proceeds to rush forward, breaking the sound barrier, and landing. Throw out a kick, kicking Parasite across the side of the face, as he immediately jumped he basically jumped backwards a few times to get some distance. As Parasite began to create several ice walls, when he saw Deku charging once again, hoping he siphoned enough powers to take the kid out. These ice powers are still fairly new. He still hasn't figured it out how to utilize the ice powers correctly. But the ice wall was a basic ability he could use for right now. Parasite is still unaware of how Deku's ice powers works. It depends on your imagination. It's not some average everyday ice quirk that people go around the world just throwing ice blasts around like they're going out of style. His ability is a lot more refined than your everyday ice user, whose ice doesn't just work that way like everyone else. Deku slammed his fist, breaking the ice walls, finally getting to Parasite and striking Parasite across the face. Then did a spin kick into his gut, then proceed to headbutt Parasite across his face, then grab his head and knee him in the face repeatedly, then ending his combination with a backwards backhand, knocking Parasite skidding across the street. This is so disappointing. You're boring. You're boring me. I'll show you boring, you little brat. Parasite charged Deku, too blinded by his anger, as you can see a devilish smile on Deku. He finds it very easy to manipulate Parasite to anger him without using his brain, and that's what he wants. As Deku blocked one of Parasite's blows, but he wasn't fast enough to block the incoming left hook that hit his mark. As Deku stepped backwards a few steps from being struck across the face from Parasite, Deku suddenly disappeared and reappeared right in front of Parasite. Parasite stepped a few steps backwards, then block an incoming kick, then slam his forearm against Deku's face, forcing Deku to skid across the street from the force of the impact that he just made with his forearm against Deku's face. Deku stopped his momentum by going into a slide. When he finally stopped, he spit out some blue blood from his mouth, freezing a little bit of the area when the blood made contact with the ground. That strike is a lot more powerful than the last one. It seems like my super strength transferred over when he siphoned some of my powers. Great. His physical strength is probably doubled now with my strength and Superman's strength. This is going to be interesting. This is going to be interesting bout. And God who knows how many siphon powers he's been leeching on since this fight even began with Superman. The fight won't be easy. The fight won't be as easy as I originally thought. I'm going to have to stop underestimating this opponent. He's no Deathstroke or nor Darkseid, and he's not even close to a Steppenwolf. But that doesn't mean he's not dangerous. Ice begins to form over Deku's arm, legs, and hands, and on his back, as dragon-like wings pop from his back. A dragon-like humanoid claws appeared alongside with his feet, and an ice tail on his lower back as he activated his Dragonkin mode. While in this state, he's far more faster. This technique only boosted up his speed. A different style of attack than he normally would, just in his base form, before he used ice armor. Deku flapped his ice dragon-like wings towards Parasite as several ice shards shoot from the ice wings, flying towards Parasite, try to run him through. Parasite was unable to react fast enough, but he managed to barely get out of the danger zone. But getting a few nicks from the flying shards of ice that he couldn't dodge out of the way fully. But mostly he's unharmed, besides several cuts on the side of his arms, waist, and on his cheek on his face. Deku begins to hover off the ground by using his ice dragon wings to take flight, then fly forward, breaking the sound barrier, past Parasite, then reappeared right behind Parasite, only for the villain to get shot off to the side as he proceeds to go through several different walls. Deku hovered back to the ground, then he immediately disappeared, picked up flight once again, and reappeared in the pathway of Parasite, still flying through the buildings, and slammed his ice dragon tail in a tail swipe against Parasite's back, making him fly back through the buildings he just flew through prior. Begin to land on the street. When he finally skid to a stop, he could see Deku staring down at him with his ice dragon tail ready to stab downward to run him through. When the tail finally moved and strike downwards, Parasite was forced to roll out of the way, barely getting a hole in his head by the tail going through his skull. Parasite immediately jumped backwards and to get some distance to catch his breath as he's breathing heavy. By now, he might have Superman's speed, strength, heat vision, and all that, but he doesn't have Superman's stamina. He's still a human when it comes down to it. Sort of. Parasite's a different. Well, it really all depends on what version of Parasite I'm using, so. Doesn't really matter right now. Let's continue. Deku, on the other hand, didn't even look winded, not even a little bit. Very small portion of his abilities was siphoned off from Parasite. His power's a bit weaker. Only has a temporary disadvantage. He knows his ability is not at 100%, but it's slowly recovering. He was a bit relieved to find out that his powers will return on their own eventually to 100%. He still has to be careful. One false move and Parasite will capitalize. And the last thing he needs is more power, more of his power being siphoned off of him, like some sort of disgusting leech. If I knew any better, I would get the impression you're trying to kill me. If I was trying to kill you, you would be dead. But I gotta say, for a leech, you're pretty light on your feet. Most likely your stolen abilities is the cause. You're one foul creature. I'm getting the feeling you don't like me very much. No, you're a future abomination. I'm very tempted just to outright kill you here and now. I don't know about me being an abomination, but we both know you can't simply kill me at this current time. He won't allow it. I highly doubt Superman would be very pleased with that outcome. Superman's strong, that is correct, but he's a total Boy Scout, always trying to find the good in everyone. It would be sad if it wasn't so funny. Your opinion on the Boy Scout is not important. I might not be able to kill you at this current time, but that doesn't mean I can't cripple you. You try, kiddo. I'm getting kind of hang of this ice ability of yours. It's quite handy. As Parasite form ice spike brass knuckles around both of his fists, Deku launched forward and tried to hit Parasite with his right fist into a right hook, only to see his strike get blocked, then immediately afterwards get countered by Parasite by slamming his fist into Deku's face. Deku used his forearm to block the strike, only to see his humanoid dragon claws begin to crack from the pressure of the pure force that Parasite threw out at Deku, forcing Deku to skid backwards. With one wave of his hand, his ice dragon appendages on his body shatter into ice particles and begin to swirl around him. Parasite just sat there and watched the ice particles swirl around Deku. What stained his hand right now was mostly curiosity to see what the kid was up to. The ice particles begin to swirl around Deku, then travel up to his right arm, right around his fist, slowly turning into a ice spike mace into his right arm, or right hand basically. Deku ran forward and swung his weapon at Parasite, only for Parasite dodge out of the way. as Deku swung again, missing Parasite, as Parasite slammed his right brass knuckle, into Deku's face. As Deku jumped backwards to get some distance, as he tries to find another approach to this. Second later, Deku re-engaged the hand-to-hand combat. Well, hand-to-hand combat for Parasite. He only has brass knuckles, and Deku is wielding a spike mace, like you would see. That kind of looks like the same mace from Hawk Girl, basically. You get the gist of what the weapon looks like. It's a little bit longer, but it's still the same type of weapon. Deku re-engaged, like I said, with hand-to-hand combat, and got hit with one of the ice brass knuckles. When Deku got struck across the face, Deku went into a spin and created an ice shield on his opposite hand, and bash Parasite in the face, dazing him for a few seconds as he backs off. Oh, you want to go medieval, do you? I could play that game. Parasite created a ice shield of his own, losing the ice brass knuckles on both of his fists, and replaced it with a shield and a one-handed battle axe in his other hand. He raised an eyebrow of Parasite's choice of ice weapon. Do you even know how to use that, you abomination? Not even a little bit, but it feels just right. Parasite and Deku blitz towards each other, at the same time swinging their own ice weapon, and as their weapons begin to clash with each other. As they block each other's strikes with their ice shield, and try to shield bash each other as they went into a struggle to push each other back. As the shields are grinding against each other, as they two are struggling for domination, Deku is slowly getting pushed back, little by little bit, by Parasite's physical strength from siphoning his powers, and siphoning Superman powers, doubling his physical strength. Deku was forced to back off with his shield, and did a spin swing with his mace into the side of Parasite, forcing the villain to step backwards a few steps. Deku stopped his spin rotation and went into a slide as he raised his ice mace. Deku stopped his spin rotation and went into a slide, stopping his momentum as he raised his ice mace in ready position to strike at the slightest hint of any aggressionness from his opponent. Parasite got up from his spot. He was kneeling on one knee currently, trying to catch his breath and holding the side of his body. That last attack might not have heavily damaged him because he has some of Superman's vulnerability. But that doesn't mean it didn't stung like a bitch. Parasite approached Deku, keeping out of his range of his weapon. Parasite went into a spin and threw his ice shield at Deku. Deku was forced to slam his ice mace against the flying shield to bat the shield away. But he didn't have time to breathe as he raised his own shield up, from the airborne Parasite, slamming his battle axe downwards. As the battle axe made contact with the ice shield, forcing Deku onto one knee. As his ice shield began to crack little by little bit, until the shield couldn't maintain its shape, it immediately shattered, forcing Deku to jump backwards, dodging a incoming attack. As Parasite battle axe slammed into the street, cutting through the street like butter, as he yanked out his weapon out of the ground and rushed Deku once again. Deku began to dodge all of the axe swings being thrown at his direction by jumping out of the way of each strike, simply jumping backwards repeatedly, little hops backwards basically. At the same time, he made contact with the floor. At the same time when he made contact with the floor with his foot, ice pillars which would come into existence and shoot towards Parasite as he's hopping around. As he's hopping backwards, he's creating ice pillars. That did not stop Parasite. He simply cut right through them, through the ice pillars, with the ice battle axe, not even losing any of his momentum, not even slowing down one bit. Deku Ice Mace formed into a new weapon as a ice bow staff was formed into his hand. Deku uses ice bow to block the incoming strike, blocking Parasite's battle axe swing. Deku saw a brief opening and spin the bow staff upwards, hitting Parasite on the hand, forcing Parasite to drop his weapon. Seeing that, Deku mustered all the strength he had and slammed his right fist into the temple of Parasite's forehead, as you could see him go shooting backwards across the street, eventually stopping motionless, completely knocked out. Deku's ice weapon disappeared in ice particles, and as he dropped down to one knee, breathing heavy, he might not have shown it, but he's extremely exhausted, battling someone who can steal your abilities and use your own abilities against you. His abilities were very interesting and dangerous, and the fact that he siphoned Superman's abilities made him even more of a dangerous opponent to fight against. But in the end, Deku was victorious. Parasite might have siphoned some of his ice abilities, but he didn't have the necessary knowledge to use it correctly. Deku ended the fight before he got to use of his stolen abilities. Before he becomes a real threat. Deku eventually recovered and caught his breath and made his way over to the fight between Metallo and the two Kryptonians. Several Metropolis police approached Deku cautiously. If you're looking for the villain, Parasite, he's back there unconscious. I would be careful if I were you. He has siphoned some powers from myself and the Boy Scout over there. Duly noted, are you a new hero? Or you are quite young. Deku raised his right eyebrow at the policeman, completely ignoring the young comment. I'm no hero. If I were to get labeled something, I would fall under the category of probably vigilante or anti-hero. I'll get out of your hair so you can do your job. I'm going to check on the Boy Scout to see how his fight is going along with Metallo. We got a few reports about Supergirl is on the scene. I have no doubt those two will take care of Metallo in short order. That may be true, sir, but I'm going to go see for myself anyways. Have a good day. Deku walked off, leaving several of the police officers to get the prisoner to the prisoner truck with some sort of restraints that will hold Parasite and block his abilities from being used while he's in transport. To, to Deku's surprise, there's still a small group of civilians grouped up watching Superman and Supergirl fight Metallo from a safe enough distance. Deku noticed a skeleton-looking man with blonde hair in the crowd as Deku walked through the crowd and stand right next to the skeleton man and begin to watch the fight between the two Kryptonians and Metallo. He's quite impressive, isn't he? You must be referring to the Boy Scout over there. It's what he's called by many of the people that are involved with the criminal underworld. I see. I saw your fight with the other one, called Parasite. Most impressive display. Do you have a quirk, or are you one of those metahumans I keep hearing about? I believe I would fall under the category of metahuman. Not entirely sure, but I know I don't have one of these quirks. I'm not familiar with the term. It's not surprising. Quirks has only started to manifest in the United States only for the past couple years. It's still a mystery why they're now just developing in the States. I'm surprised your Japanese is so natural. It's my chosen language. I know English as well. I have a photographic memory, so learning different languages is not too difficult. Where's my manners? I'm Toshinori Yagi. Deku, a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Yagi. A stray kryptonite beam was heading towards the crowd of people. All Might was about to transform into his buff form to save the civilians, only to see a humongous ice dome cover the entire crowd. When the energy shot made contact with the ice, it shook the structure for a little bit, but it did not pierce through it. When the coast was clear, Deku dissipated the ice dome that shattered into harmless ice particles. Deku looked around to see all the civilians are unharmed. Deku might do some questionable things, but there's one thing he would not get involved with, is getting innocent civilians involved. Thank you, my boy. You saved a lot of people's lives here today. Deku knows, unfortunately, fights like this kinda end up getting innocent civilians, involved, even if you try to avoid such situations. You might excuse me, Mr. Yagi. It looks like I'm gonna have to get involved once again. It looks like the Boy Scout and his blonde sidekick is having a bit of trouble. If I were you all, I suggest you would move further back to a safe enough distance, civilians. I won't be able to save you again a second time. With that said, Deku walked off without saying another word to All Might or any of the civilians as they are watching him walk towards the danger. Deku saw Superman breathing heavy and has several cuts over his body from being constantly exposed to kryptonite from the chest of Metallo. That's where he shoots out his beam-like energy that comes from a big chunk of kryptonite that's used for his power source as well. Supergirl's not doing any better. The body of Metallo seems to be heavily advanced technology. The fact that he's able to exchange blows with two Kryptonians it's proof that times are changing, that if technology could get to this extent, it won't be long to see normal civilians acquiring such technology to fight for their own desires, if that may be good or evil. That's not really important. The mere fact that one day technology will surpass or match will either surpass or match up with the superhuman community on Earth. Deku approached Metallo from behind and not even making a sound of him walking towards them could be heard. Deku tapped Metallo on the right shoulder. When Metallo turned around, he sees the same boy that was fighting Parasite had his entire arm into his chest, his hands wrapped around his kryptonite core that gives him life. Without his core, his entire body will shut down. Really had enough of you. What do we have here? This seems to be your core. I wonder what happens if it gets damaged. As Deku slightly tightened his grip around the kryptonite, cracking it little by little bit. So this is kryptonite. This is the first time I've seen this stuff up close and personal. Judging by the look on your face, Metallo, at least I think it's a shock expression. I can't really tell. You're basically a walking lump of metal with a brain inside. Not even entirely human, really. But what makes you human, anyways? We won't get into that. But that doesn't really matter. It's already getting late. And I wasted so much of my time here fighting you two losers. I have things to do in Metropolis. Pleasant dreams, Metallo. I have no doubt we'll cross paths again. Deku crushed the kryptonite in Metallo's chest that's currently in the palm of his hands, making Metallo go dark as Metallo's green eyes would go dim and begin to flicker on and off until you could not see any green in his eyelids or the eye area of his metal skull. As Metallo goes dark and falls to the ground on his back, completely shut off, as Deku controlled some of the water from the nearby fountain and made it into a round orb and stuck his hands and arms into the water so he could get rid of the kryptonite residue over his arm. Get away from his body as he sees the two Kryptonians approaching. I gotta say, once again, thanks for for helping us out. Hopefully this is not going to be a habit, being rescued by a kid. I suppose it would look I guess it wouldn't look too good for your reputation if the kid outshines you. No, I would never. Relax, cuz. He's just messing with you. Judging by that smirk on his face. Relax, Boy Scout. I was only having fun. This has been a fun time and all. It's getting kind of late. I need to find a hotel and get some food. I'll be in Metropolis for a while. Gives me the perfect opportunity to visit some of the famous art museums you have in your lovely city. Catch you later, Boy Scout. And Blondie. As Deku walked off, well, begins to walk off. What a very interesting boy. Well, I'll catch you later, cuz I have to finish my patrol. We'll meet up. We'll meet up and talk to tomorrow. Okay. See you then, cuz. Superman watched Kara fly off. All Might approached Superman and stand right beside him. Clark knew All Might was there. He noticed him in the crowd watching the battle. You look terrible, my friend. Comes with the territory. You look a bit roughed up yourself. I gotta say, that's one scary villain you were fighting. Those two were more of the wild ones that rain havoc across Metropolis. It seems like Metallo was upgraded since our last battle, and apparently he's involved with the Legion of Doom. Were you able to catch the young man's fight with Parasite? That I did, my friend. He's far too young for this kind of life, but still impressive. Someone around his age to fight so well. He's quite talented. He could even be a prodigy. I would even go so far as to say he's a prodigy. I don't know much about the prodigy thing, but I agree with most of it. He was going to interfere regardless of what I said. I have no doubt he seems to be the stubborn type. What's your opinion on the boy, anyways? Quite powerful, has a leveled head, quite intelligent, trust me. If you know who I work for, I know when I come across someone who's a genius. He's a bit cold, and his ice abilities are quite impressive. And he has some sort of super strength alongside with his ice abilities. It must be a byproduct from being probably a metahuman. If you're worried about the villain he captured, he's already been captured and restrained. He's on his way back to prison, most likely. That's good. I was concerned if the boy would outright just kill Parasite. He seems the type not to mess around. The boy doesn't seem like a killer, but things run differently back in Japan. So I don't know what the boy's capable of. But I believe he's good. I believe he's a good kid. At the heart of the matter. As we cut to Deku, you see Deku walking down the street. Just got done eating, and he's trying to find a decent hotel to stay in. After a brief exchange with money to the clerk, he paid for his room and turned in for the night. As we cut to a skyscraper somewhere in Metropolis, as we fan to the top floor, or focus basically, into the building, revealing two people watching footage of the fight that just took place not even a couple hours ago. Two people watching are revealed to be two women, Amanda Wheeler and Yuri. Deku's master and sensei. So I take it by the boy's fighting stances that he's one of yours. Indeed he is. I'm surprised you're not even curious why he's even here in the first place. Of the metropolis of all places. There's no reason for me to be curious. I know why he's here. Deku is an excellent student. But the boy is an artist at heart. He's here to visit several of the art museums, most likely. The boy has a soft spot for art. But enough about my student. How's that little project you were talking about the last time we met? I believe you called it the Suicide Squad. That's far from being a reality. I still need to find allies in my department before the Suicide Squad could come into reality. I won't lie, your student would make a good addition to the team. That is a very interesting proposal, but I can't allow that, at least for now, until his training is complete. My student is off limits. And when he's completed his training, feel free to approach the subject with him. But until then, hands off. You drive a hard bargain, Yuri, but it works either way. I'm a bit suspicious that there's no other information on the kid. The kid's the ghost. The moment I saw him fighting with Superman, I ran his image through the database and found nothing. Kid's a ghost. Before he showed up at Alaska from many of our spies. Always so paranoid, you haven't changed one bit. In my point of view, it doesn't matter where he came from. That doesn't matter to me. I would advise you, if you pursue this suspicion of yours, I would tread carefully. I see all my students as my children, and Deku's no different. Well, I do enjoy our little visits. I'll be heading back to Alaska. Good luck on this Suicide Squad of yours. Until we meet again, Amanda. We should do this more often. I agree, my friend. But we have our own responsibilities. You have your government job. And I have my children to teach and guide. Yuri opened the portal and stepped through it, leaving Amanda alone to her own devices. That's where we're going to stop it. Hope you guys have a good night and day. Judge my time zones. And I'll catch you in the next video.